All right, it is time. It's 4 o'clock. Welcome. I'm so glad to see so many people here for an afternoon session. I know we're all exhausted at this point. I am Athena Hoeppner. I'm with the University of Central Florida, and each of us, as we come up to speak, will introduce ourselves, speed up things. I am the Discovery Services Librarian, and one of my duties is usage reports and analytics for our electronic resources, our licensed content. So we're going to try to talk today about counter usage reports and doing more with more. So my role here will be to try and talk to you or present this as though you were the people who would be asking me for reports. And some of you might be electronic resources librarians, and this might be really familiar stuff to you. Others of you might be pretty new to Counter, and hopefully this will be revealing and helpful. If you do need to dig into more, you can go and get all the details by going to the Code of Practice. And there was just the 5.1 version released, so here's a link to it. So Counter is counting interactions of a user with an interface and content. It is counting what someone is doing on an interface. And it's going to be something like a search or an investigation where they're clicking on a result, or they're clicking on a table of contents, or they're clicking on something to get the full text. When they click on a full text item, it's also a request. And it may be that they tried to get something that they didn't have the license to get, and that's going to be an access denied type of interaction. So that's what's basically counted. And those are reported as metrics, specific metric types, depending on the situation, the specific type of thing that's going on. So there's different metrics, and I'm not going to try and explain those because that'd take a whole hour. But these are the basic ones. Actually, these are all of them. And those are rolled into reports of different, I can call it levels, but it's not really levels. So you can have all of the searches that were done on a platform, or the searches that were done per database, all of the usage of the titles on a platform, or the usage per title in a platform, and all of the requests for items like a video. And they're all reported in these different reports. The reports include additional elements besides just those counts of how many interactions there were per metric type. So for instance, of course, you would want to know the title of the item or the database. And you might have the publisher and things like an ISBN and ISSN, which I have these little matching symbols there because those are going to be extremely useful if you need to take your counter data and try and match it up to some other data source. And then there's data types and access methods, which are really useful for filtering. So data type could be something like, this is a book item, that is a journal item, here is a report. So if you're trying to see from your title report, what's the usage of your books versus what's the usage of your newspapers and things, you can do that by filtering for your data type. Same with access type, you can see whether it's controlled or open access. And there's going to be new access types rolling out, which I'm not going to talk about today, but everything's always evolving in Counter. And access methods, whether it's a text and data mining or regular interaction. So you can use these to really dig in and see stuff going on with how the interactions are going with your licensed data. So in summary, you got your interactions, that is users doing stuff on your platform, that's turned into some sort of metric, such as search, request, denials, and investigations. And then they're reported in these platform database title and item reports with additional data elements. All right, so that's the basis of what we are working with to provide answers about what's going on with usage of your collection. So those actually can answer a lot of questions. But it requires us to gather all that data, either by going to each vendor site and downloading the report one at a time, using, fill out a form, download the report, fill out a form, download the different report, and so forth, or use a sushi harvester where you fill out your login credentials for the sushi, and the harvester goes and pulls the data for you, sometimes on an automated basis, but sometimes it's I press a button and it causes the download. And then we have to archive and manage those files so they'll be available to us when someone says, what was the usage 5 years ago? What was the usage 10 years ago? And then combine, filter, and work with the data to get the information that we want for analyses. The elements and metrics can be combined to answer some very interesting questions, and here's a few examples. I'm going to dig in a little bit more to this first one. How does the usage of our pre-1997 journals compare to the post-1997 over a number of years? Because this is usually the cutoff for our package data. Our journal packages data usually starts around 1997, and anything earlier than that might be archive that we've purchased or some separately. Losing my ability to articulate here. But okay, so to do that analysis, it's going to involve me going to 86 different platforms and downloading the master reports. And we usually are going to do 3 additional other reports along with those master reports. And then we're going to probably do that 2 times a year, because I have to report twice a year on this stuff. So to gather the data to answer that, I'm downloading 1,204 reports a year just to have the data on hand. And then I would have to look through those and see there's 64 of the platform, let me try this again. 64 platform reports report the unique item request for the data type journals. So 64 times 5 years, 320 reports that I'm working with to consolidate that data so I have all the information I need to get this pie chart. Yep. 90% of our usage is in after the 1997 deadline in our journals. Not too surprising. So it was a lot of work for a relatively simple number. When you think you're asking a simple question, it's a lot of work to get to it. And many of the questions require you to get other data. So if I'm looking for cost per use, well, there's nothing about cost in the counter data. I have to pull that in from somewhere else. Use of subscribed versus access-only titles in your package deals. Again, that data is somewhere else. And you can align that data with those ISBNs and so forth, but it would mean gathering the counter reports, then identifying the element that matches in your 2 data sets, cleaning the data as needed to get them to actually work, to match, and then integrating them with R or SQL or Excel or something along those lines, and using formulas and pivot tables and other things to pull out what you need. It's doable, but it is a lot of work. So here's an example of looking at our fall 2023 course textbooks and what is the usage of those textbooks in the fall. Per platform. And I'm not going to go read all the steps there, but you can see I'm able to do it, and it gives some interesting numbers, but it's really too much to do very often. It takes a lot of time, and you probably don't have a lot of people to throw at doing these sorts of analyses. So you can use tools to get more answers faster. So there's sushi harvesters, some that will automatically harvest your data, analytics services of various kinds that produce all sorts of reports and provide dashboards and so forth. UCF uses the ones with the check marks here, the counter harvester, which is a free tool that will let you just pull on, you click a button, it downloads the file for you. The Alma Analytics, we filled out our sushi credentials there, and it's harvesting automatically. And CELUS, which I'm going to talk about more right now. And of course, these other tools that you could use that I am not using. We don't have Panorama, and I don't know how to use R. Okay, so I'm only going to talk about 3 things, but there's so much more, so I hope you will check it out. But I'm going to talk about getting that data into CELUS, using tags, and then using their analytics and reporting tool. So the first thing, getting the data into CELUS is pretty straightforward if you know anything about how to get your sushi credentials, which your eResources librarian should. So I go to their sushi management dashboard, and I click Add Sushi. It's already showing me the platforms I've already configured, and I can edit them and so forth. But if I click that Add button, I get a form, and it has a registry. So when I start typing in the platform name, it has a registry link. It will let me see that this is already in the counter registry, and if I click on that, it tells me more information about how to fill out this form. So for instance, if I clicked on that little R over there, it says, my API key can be found at this space on the Springer or Nature site, and so forth. So you will have to fill this out, but once you do, you can then, it'll start automatically harvesting. You can monitor that in a number of ways. You can dig in and see individual harvest. and it starts feeding into dashboards on the system. So here's the interest dashboard, which is sort of looking at interest globally. It's, did someone download, did someone search, did someone hit a denial, any type of thing that indicates someone wanted to interact with an item. And at the top of that, there are easy controls to sort of tweak what it's showing on the dashboards. I can click on any of those check marks to show different metrics, turn them on and off, and there's little icons above that that do other interesting things. I don't have time to show them all to you. There's also sort of a title dashboard that you can easily interact with. This one, it took me like 3 clicks to say, I only want to see full texts and denials, and then sort it by the denials. And it's showing me my list of top journals that are denied access, and also the full text that is actually being allowed for the last 2 years. And it has over there, you'll see a Scopus tag. So that's going to be my transition to the tags in a moment. Same with platforms. I had someone enter the cost per use, or not the cost per use, the cost per platform per year. And so I told it to show me the full text, and I clicked on the little price tag icon over in the corner, and now it's showing me the full text, the price we paid, and the price per use. So you can get really quick information. I don't have to be asked to provide this report for someone who needs it. They can just log in and click a few things, and they have the information at their fingertips. Okay, so the tags that we saw, there was the Scopus ones, which are automatically in CELUS and are for subjects, which are really cool. And I started playing with tags only about a month and a half ago, and I love them. So first of all, you create a tag class, you create a sub tag, and then you assign the tags to a set of titles. Okay, more specifically, you're going to take the list of ISSNs or ISBNs for the titles you want to tag. You upload those into CELUS. It then pre-matches for you. It says, of all the things that you have data for, the data that you have harvested, not everything that exists, but your data set, what are the matching ISSNs and ISBNs for this? So it says, okay, you uploaded 9,000 ISBNs. Of those, we found 1,000 that had usage for your reported book usage. And then I would say, well, I want to apply a tag to those, something about books, and I'll create a tag and apply it to that title list. I know that's kind of vague, but I'll walk through an example and then I'll be done. So I created these 2 tags, one for a DDA project that I want to track, and one for our textbooks that were assigned in fall 2023. And I'm going to dig into the fall 2023 textbooks ones. And that's the one where I uploaded 9,800 rows of ISBNs. I did not dedupe, so I'm not sure exactly how many ISBNs were unique in that. It matched 1,064 titles, and now I can apply that tag to a particular, to the titles that matched, and I did. It's easier than I made it sound right now. And the next thing I can do is I can go and use it to create reports. This is my favorite part of the whole tool. So to create a report, I'm going to just click on the create report. I choose which report type I'm looking at. Because I want title data, I'm choosing the title report. And I'm going to say I want it to report at the platform level, and I'm going to have it report each metric that is used. So for instance, EBSCO is going to show me the unique title request, the denial text, denial request, and things like that. And then I'm going to say what sort of filters I want. Each of the different report types, like if I chose the multimedia report, it's going to be a different set of metrics. So you'll see it change as you switch around. But here it is. I've chosen my metric. I've chosen to report by metric, year and month, and then year, month, and data type as my filters. So here's what the filters look like. I would, underneath that, selecting your row, column, and filters, at the bottom of the page you have this. So I can say apply the tag 2023 fall as the filter here. So don't show me anything that doesn't have that tag. Show me only data type books, and for the range August through October of 2023, because that's our fall semester. I can see I've lost people a little bit, but I'm going to plow through. So I click And this report comes up right away. I don't have to wait. If it's a really massive report, I may have to wait a few seconds. But here it is. I have the metrics, a unique item request, total item request, so on. And then each month, and that's for across all of our book platforms and all of the books that matched the fall 2023 tag. So this is our usage of our fall 2023 books that were assigned as textbooks. And I can say, oh no, I really want it at the title level, so I can just scroll up, change it, the tags and the column and rows that I've selected, and here you are. You have the use per book and per month. So very, very handy. And I feel like I got a little vague there at the end, and I can see some confused faces, but it is really pretty easy to do for any resources librarian who's pretty familiar with what the metrics are and so forth. So it lets you answer your questions with saving your e-resources librarians time and sanity. And with that, I'm going to hand it over.
Thank you very much, Athena. My name is John Kimbrough. I'm an e-resource librarian at Georgetown University. This is my boss.
And he's the e-resources librarian. I'm Mark Winek. I'm the unit head for electronic resources and serials. And as Athena was talking about with counter data, we often get asked at Georgetown, and I know many of you get asked this, what's our ebook usage? And that can sometimes be a difficult question to answer, even though you think it shouldn't be a difficult question to answer, because some of our ebook vendors, lots of our ebook vendors, provide counter usage statistics, and of course we ask them to do that, and we ask our new providers to provide that, and if they're not, we harp on them for ages to start providing counter data, but others just don't. They provide their own custom usage, and the non-counter vendors include some of our larger ebook providers, so we can't just dismiss or ignore their usage as fringe use. What we really want to avoid doing, though, is adding together the counter and non-counter usage. So doing this is like asking how many pieces of fruit do we have in the picture. There's many more grapes than apples, but is that truly meaningful? If a user views a single page, is that really the same as a full unique title request in a counter report? So treating counter and non-counter usage as equivalent also makes cost per use calculations very suspect and can make non-counter platforms look much cheaper, especially depending on how they're measuring that non-counter usage. It also means that non-counter platforms often disproportionately affect our overall usage measurements. So the pie chart on the left shows Georgetown's ebook inventory. We took out government documents just because that would have skewed everything. So a chart of your own institution's ebook inventory may look very different. At Georgetown, about 66% of our ebook titles are hosted on counter-compliant platforms, but 34% of our ebooks are on non-counter vendors, so that's a pretty large slice of the pie, and that's a large slice of the pie both in terms of content but also expenditure. However, if we loaded all the non-counter reports we possibly could into CELUS, we would account for most of those non-counter vendors. So now on the right, the slice of untracked vendors is much smaller, which is only 7%.
Thank you. So like Athena, before we used CELUS, and we've been on CELUS a couple of years now, we were juggling lots and lots of spreadsheets to answer questions like what is our ebook use. But as Mark just said, CELUS recently introduced a feature where you can load non-counter usage. But what good is that? I mean, if we can't add together counter and non-counter usage, what can we do with the data? And one thing that Mark and I thought about was what would happen if, we don't want to add the numbers together, but if we compared trends, are the patterns of usage similar between our ebook vendors that provide counter data and the ebook vendors that provide non-counter data? And with Excel spreadsheets that we would get from vendors, this just became a Herculean project, but CELUS made this really easy. because for certain vendors, you can ingest non-counter data, and CELUS is adding vendors all the time. So it's even this week, they added a vendor that I was really excited about to hear. There's very little pre-processing that we have to do of the Excel spreadsheets. And then CELUS allows us to look at the data separately. It doesn't add the numbers together, but it does allow us to look at the numbers either separately, or we can look at them together in a composite view with counter data from other platforms. And here is a graph that may not be visible in the back, but shows some of the trend analysis that we're talking about.
Yep. So as John mentioned, we can really, while we're not going to add those numbers together, we're not going to mash the counter data together with the non-counter data, we can look at some of the trends across. So the top graph in teal shows our total ebook usage from our counter platforms with unique title requests since January 2021. And the bottom graph shows our O'Reilly ebook and video usage over the same period. O'Reilly produces a non-counter report of units viewed. Don't look at the values because they're very, very different. But starting to look at the trends, we can see that our usage aligns with Georgetown's academic calendar, and we see dips in summer and in the December-January period when classes aren't in session. But the usage peaks from our counter vendors and O'Reilly aren't always in the same month. And the dips in O'Reilly usage are much more pronounced. I mean, one area in particular, if you look in the red, around December 2022, January 2023, you see that really deep dive in the O'Reilly data versus a much smaller dip in the counter data. So one possible hypothesis is that O'Reilly has a mix of research, literature, and practical how-to content. Maybe that was only used in supplemental usage versus in the classroom.
In addition to looking at trends on overall usage, we can also use CELUS to look at trends for individual ebook usage. So we do have some ebooks that are available on multiple platforms. Here's one called The Data-Driven Leader, which we have available through ProQuest eBook Central Complete, which provides reports using Counter. And we also have it available on O'Reilly, which, as Mark just said, provides different sorts of non-counter reports. Here's what the title view looks like in CELUS, and I know that this is very, very hard to read, even if you're in the front. So I tried to expand the graph on the bottom a little bit, and this is as big as I could get it on the slide. What you're seeing is blue bars are the counter compliant usage coming in from eBook Central, and the red bars are the usage from O'Reilly. And again, we don't want to look at comparing the values, the size of the bars from red to blue to each other, because of course, because of the way O'Reilly does metrics, it's going to look like a lot more use. But what we do want to look at here, and what we find interesting, is when do we see high periods of sustained usage from one platform, and are we seeing high usage on the other platform, or are we seeing lower usage? So we have a couple of fall semesters in here where we see high sustained usage in 2021, fall of 2021. We had some high sustained usage from eBook Central. Didn't quite see that with O'Reilly. But in fall of 2022, we did have some more high sustained usage from ProQuest. Again, just look at the blue bars and compare those to the blue bars. And that year, we also saw some high sustained usage from O'Reilly. And so we're sort of wondering, does this represent a shift maybe in user interface preference? Was it maybe students in one class didn't like the O'Reilly interface and really targeted the ProQuest eBook Central platform, maybe versus another semester where students did like the O'Reilly platform, and that's why we saw sustained usage on both platforms. So these are some of the things that you can do with these comparisons in CELUS. Again, we don't want to add numbers together. It's really tempting to do that, but we do not want to do that because these are different metrics. But this allows us But CELUS allows us to make these types of comparisons, what I might call cautious comparisons between counter and non-counter data. And though it is possible to do this outside of CELUS, it just becomes much easier with the CELUS interface. And now I think I'll invite folks from CELUS up to talk about some of the other features that are in there. We've just really, Athena and I and Mark have just really kind of scratched the surface for the stuff that you can do with this. We've really enjoyed working with this platform. And there's, you know, we can talk some more about some ways that we've enjoyed working with it. But we wanted to let the CELUS folks talk to you about maybe some attractions that are coming down the road. So.
Good afternoon. First of all, let me apologize for my voice. It's not in the best shape after these 3 days in Charleston. I would like to thank hugely to Athena, Mark, and John, because it is really a great pleasure for us to see practical use and the insights that e-resources managers can get with solid data and different views. And it helps us a lot to further develop what can help your lives in your everyday jobs. So just briefly, what's coming up next? We are working currently on upgraded reporting modules, which would include the possibility that you can get periodically some standardized reports to your emails. It can flag any anomalies, or it can report to you when there's some error in sushi harvesting, for example, so you can immediately see that something is going on. We are, as Mark and John mentioned, we are constantly adding new e-resources that are not counter compliant. So we would love to hear from you. What are your most significant vendors that are not on counter? Mark mentioned O'Reilly, for example, so we already got that, but we are eager to hear what other publishers you are dealing with and what you would like to see in CELUS to help your everyday data management. And also we are working on detection of anomalies in the usage stats data. So whenever there is some exceptional peak or something strange in the data, it would flag it to you and send you an email. So that's what we are currently working on, and we will be launching these new features probably in the next 3 or 6 months. But there's much more that we currently have in our pipeline and in our heads. But the question always is where to start. So we have some ideas where we would really love to hear from you. What is your priority, and what would you like to see? What would help you the most? So these are some big topics that we would like to work on. And we also created a short survey or poll in the Whova application where you can vote for one of these, so we can instruct our developers where to start. So big one definitely is the cost per use statistics and analysis. To some extent, we already have that covered through a partnership with Consortium Manager. So those of you who are using Consortium Manager and CELUS at the same time can benefit from advanced cost per use stats and analysis already. We are also, another big topic, especially here in Charleston, it was greatly debated, is open access. So we are now thinking how to handle the stats for open access e-resources and how to best present the data and what kind of analysis you would like to do with that. Another one is in-depth analysis of overlaps. So if you have titles from coming from different platforms, to be able to see what happens if you stop subscribing to one of these platforms. And my personal favorite, benchmarking and predictions or acquisition suggestions. So, for example, thanks to all the data that we can see at different libraries, we can benchmark or compare. For example, if there is, let's say, Journal of Medicine that you are subscribing to and it is heavily used, and we can see at some other library that if you have Journal of Medicine and they have Journal of, let's say, Physiology, which is heavily used, it might be a suggestion worth considering that you might also want to purchase Journal of Physiology. So it should help in collection building and provide you with some suggestions for better acquisitions. So that's ultimately what we are aiming for. I'm really happy to see that the shift from spending weeks or months in data processing and getting the usage stats is really shifting to spending your valuable time in analysis and data-driven decisions. And so that's what we would like to proceed further with, and we are eager to hear your suggestions and opinions. Thank you very much.
I think we have time for questions.